As we know, with the COVID pandemic, many people have reconsidered their lifestyle. Rather than live in London, for example, where they don't have to go to an office any longer, they may think about moving out to the countryside to provide a healthier lifestyle for their family and room for the children to play in the garden, for example. We've noticed here in Guildford that many people have relocated out from London, and so I thought it would be interesting to look at what the cost comparison is for living in London versus living here in Guildford. So I've been looking at a typical example of a couple I know who've moved out from Richmond in southwest London. Of course, when moving home, one of the first factors you have to consider is your budget. So I've looked at a cost comparison between living in Richmond and living here in Guildford. So what is the cost difference? Major cost considerations will be the cost of travelling to London, should one have to go into the office on occasions. So how does an annual season ticket from Richmond to London compare to that of Guildford to London? So having consulted the South West Trains website, the cheapest annual season ticket from Richmond to London Waterloo was £1,436. And the figure for Guildford to London was £3,936. So for those moving out to Guildford, but still having to go into the office and therefore needing an annual season ticket, this would add an approximate £200 per month to their household budget. So the next consideration in moving to Guildford would be how much would their mortgage cost in Guildford compared to that in Richmond. In other words, would somebody moving to Guildford be able to acquire more property for the same mortgage as they had in Richmond or not? So according to Zoopla, the average price paid in the London Borough of Richmond for a property last year was £948,926. So the average property price paid in the London Borough of Richmond for 2021 by property type was as follows. The average price paid for a property in Guildford in 2021 was £608,503, and by property type, prices paid were as follows. So while Guildford is considered by many around the country to be an affluent town, you can see that the property prices here in Guildford are still considerably less than those in Richmond. So this will either help buyers to save money or enable them to upgrade to a larger property. So in this case, it obviously depends upon the buyer and their property choice, but they could potentially be either paying the same as they did in Richmond or possibly less on their mortgage. The other consideration, of course, is the cost of living in Richmond compared to Guildford. So Numbeo, the cost comparison website, reckon that to live in Guildford, you would need £3,936 in order to afford what would cost £4,900 in London. They have assumed in their calculation that rent would be paid in either Richmond or Guildford. Numbeo uses a cost of living plus rent index to make these cost comparisons. Here are some examples of the cost comparisons that Numbeo makes between living in London and living in Guildford. Consumer prices in Guildford are 7.54% lower than in London. This excludes rent. Consumer prices including rent in Guildford are 19.4% lower than in London. Rent prices in Guildford are 34.62% lower than in London. Restaurant prices in Guildford are 4.5% lower than in London. However, grocery prices in Guildford are 5.21% higher than in London. But overall, local purchasing power in Guildford is 12.98% lower than in London. Another consideration is the house price to earnings ratio. This is the multiple of income required to pay for your property. So for example, if your annual income is £50,000 and you're purchasing a property costing £500,000, This is a multiple of 10. But the current ratio for Richmond is 16.4 and the ratio for Guildford is 12.2. This once again suggests that living in Guildford is more affordable than doing so in the London Borough. So once again it seems conclusive that moving to Guildford has a strong financial case for it. And certainly it's got the environmental benefits of living close to the country and the possibility of being able to afford a larger home for you and your family. And of course the environmental benefits are there to be seen. While the roads will be busy, they'll be less congested with taxis and buses compared to Richmond. And of course in the London Borough of Richmond you do have Richmond Park. With the Guildford you've got many miles of country walks and an outstanding area of natural beauty. You also have many country villages with country pubs where food is likely to be less expensive than that in expensive West End London restaurants. So in conclusion, there are obviously many factors to consider when making an important decision like moving out from London to Guildford. But some of the factors to be considered are as follows. What type of property do you need? Does it cater for the potential growth of your family? And is it in a situation close to local facilities and transport links? Do you have to be near a large town centre, or can you live out of the country? And most importantly perhaps is, where are you likely to be working in the future? Will you be working for the same company, or will they let you work from home, with possibly only the occasional visit up to their office? Thanks for watching the video, and if you'd like to know more about living in Guildford, then please watch the video here about the 10 best things about living in Guildford. If you want to know where the best schools are in Guildford, then please watch this video here. Hi, I've been Richard Hodgson, powered by EXP, your local Guildford estate agent. And if you'd like to know more about buying or selling property in Guildford, and indeed investing in property, then please don't hesitate to call me or contact me on the details to follow.